Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Mic here in our beautiful Music Town studios, which are on the second floor of Hockeytown in downtown Detroit. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate that. And I've got another special guest today. Really anxious to talk to this guy. The stories and just the who's who that this guy has worked with and what he's done, and it's just, I'm ready to delve in. This is going to be a fun, interesting time here on Behind the Mic with Drew Schultz. Hi, Drew.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Yeah, we just, actually, you were just on my podcast talking about the EPK and all of that for musicians, but it was like, okay, we got to get you on this show for your music and everything. So very excited to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
My first time here. It's awesome.
Yeah, we have a great little setup here, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we like it. It works. And that's the whole thing, is promoting the music and you know, getting people to realize what we've got here in the Metro Detroit area. It's just amazing. So, but you already know that, right?
Well, the talent is definitely still here. Yes. Never left.
Never left. Absolutely. So just because people may not know of you, you've been behind the front runners on the bands and all of that, and a lot of the back behind the scenes types of things. So I want to make sure that, you know, people get to know who you are and what you are all about. So, you know, I know you grew up or were raised in Ohio, but you ended up...
You can't say that publicly in Michigan, though. We have to edit that part out. Oh. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I did grow up in Ohio.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't say anything like Buckeyes or anything, so... But, you knew at a very early age that music was your thing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's back up a little bit, you know, of how this all started, because there's always something that, you know, a musician, something inspires them, or a person, or something. And what is the story with you and how that happened?
Yeah, I grew up in a pretty musical family. My dad was a guitar player in a band in his high school and college days. They actually toured opening for the Love and Spoonful.
Oh, wow.
But he had not played for quite some time, but my mom was a real active, and still is a real active musician in Cleveland.
Okay.
She had her college degree in piano and voice accompaniment from Heidelberg College in Ohio, and became a judge. So had a whole career dovetail, but never stopped being musically active either.
Okay.
And so she was in a band called the No Name Band that is still performing in Cleveland, in and around Cleveland, and she would play percussion and sing, and sometimes hop on the piano, and then she's in a theater group that does a big event once a year. So she is still really active in performing.
Nice.
And her band would come and rehearse at our house sometimes, or when I was young, I would go to their house where they held the rehearsals, and they really instilled that love of old school R&B, Motown, the kind of 60s and 70s stuff.
Yeah, the Motown was huge for you.
Oh, yeah, still is.
It still is. Well, I'm going to talk about the way you're intertwined with Motown is just, you know, first of all, I'm reading your bio, you know, and I got to know you from getting ready for the podcast before, but it's like reading this more, you know, delving into it a little more and more, and it's like, holy cow, this guy, you know, it's like the who's who, and your resume is like, it's got to be 10 pages long if you...
Pam Rossi.
No. Just, it was blowing my mind. It's like, oh my gosh. And then I was, and maybe you can clarify this too, I was kind of confused about the age and where you were. It seems like you were really young when things really took off for you.
Yeah, I had it instilled real early to chase after the people who I really wanted to meet. And originally it was just as a fan, but even then that was as early as middle school.
Okay.
And my dad really pushed me to make sure that I was introducing myself to people who I wanted to meet. And whether it was getting a drumhead signed or taking a photograph just as a fan, but that pretty quickly morphed into trying to position myself more as a fellow musician or a contemporary person, even as young as high school.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was very fortunate that the first real high level performance that I did was when I was 19 with the Four Tops.
Four Tops, yeah.
And but it all stemmed from just years of talking my way backstage and meeting people and yeah, I don't know.
You got that concept of it's who you know really early. I think it's just because you were. I mean, how many kids at that age? Still kind of kids, you know, I mean, young adult, whatever, but would have that mindset
I mean,
to want to do it that way?
it initially definitely was not a networking mindset, but
Okay.
definitely turned into one as I realized, like you mentioned, that certain people, you get connected and it becomes this spider web of this person knows this person knows this person who you worked with, so word kind of works its way
Yeah.
in and around that web. But as a kid, it really was. The first group was a group called the Yellow Jackets. It was a jazz ensemble. And I wanted to get a drumhead signed, and I was too scared. And my dad was like, "I'm not driving you home until you go up and talk to these people." And they were the nicest group of guys that I ever could have ran into. And so they also are somewhat responsible for pushing that snowball down the hill, because if they had been like, "Get out of here, kid, we don't want to talk to you,"
Right.
I would have been crushed,
Oh,
but they
yeah.
were so welcoming. And I actually talked to my students about this a lot. There came a point where I stopped asking for autographs. And that was when things started to turn towards the professional.
And why do you think that was something did you really make an effort not to ask for autographs anymore, or it just kind of happened?
Yeah, I was huge into Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I had talked my way backstage at another Earth, Wind, and Fire show again. And there's a gentleman named Ralph Johnson, and Ralph is one of their original members from their whole span of hits. And Ralph, he would sign stuff, and they had a table where they were all lined up in a row. And I just remember that there were people all around me waiting to get autographs, and I had already gotten a million things signed by them. And I don't know what it was. I was just like, I'm going to put it back in my bag. And so that way, when I got up to Ralph that day, he was like, "Hey, what do you got for me to sign? What do you?" And I was like, "Nothing. How's it going?
Oh.
What are you listening to? What records should I check out?" And so conversation began to be less about being a fan and more about being like, it moved on to, what do you suggest I should do? What drummer should I check out? What records should I listen to? What books should I buy? Because Ralph is a big educator. He's written his own drum method book and stuff. And I don't think I knew it then, but when I started to separate myself and say, I'm not going to ask for any more autographs, that's when people started to think about me as a musician, like you're saying. And network started, even though I wasn't thinking about it that way.
Well, and that's Network 101. It's all about them. What can you do for them? And, ask them, not about you. And it's like, you knew that you right away.
Yeah, I mean, but it was definitely a two-way street. I mean, Ralph and I, every once in a while, still go back and forth about, check this out, check that out. But what I quickly realized was that all the people who I am a super fan of, they themselves are super fans of other people. Mm. So our connection became, who are you a fan of? And so it was them passing their kind of tastes on to me. So like Uriel Jones from the Funk Brothers was another real early kind of mentor of mine. And he had me checking out Art Blakey and Elvin Jones and all of these classic bebop jazz drummers, because that's what he loved. Yeah. He loved jazz, even though he played all the Motown stuff.
Right.
So, and it was just fun. And I think it's like you're saying, I don't think a lot of younger people were going up to those artists and asking those questions.
Right.
But I think it's just that I had loved them since I was a little kid because of the music my mom played. Mm-hmm. And then when I started to meet them, it was just like you get the starstruck kind of hero worship thing out of your system, and then it's like, okay, but I still want to keep this conversation going.
Right.
I don't want to just be another fan.
And they probably appreciated that too, that you weren't there. I'll just, here's another autograph. I'm going to sign another, the 10,000 item here. And they probably, you stood out. It's like, okay, this kid doesn't want my autograph. He wants to know more information.
Yeah.
And they're willing to give that. So, you set it up perfectly.
And I always joke with people that I'm fortunate that my heroes are also educators. The drummer for Tower of Power was another huge early, I would just chase this guy down any chance I got to talk to him about drums or whatever it was.
You weren't creepy about it, right?
I was a young kid, so okay. I think that it was cute. But luckily, I was still cute. I wasn't doing it when I was 32. So
there's a problem, right?
It's cute. But no, like all of these guys were teachers, and so I always joke with my friends where if I had happened to love like Metallica or Slipknot or and I'm not trying to say anything about the metal genre, mm-hmm. but artists who were not also educators, they might not have had that passion of passing that information on about drum licks and riffs and techniques and people to check out. It was so.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways it was just luck that those were the people who I wanted to meet.
And you keep talking drumming. Of course, the drummer is your main primary thing. So.
Yeah.
Did you always start? Did you start with the drums and you always were the drummer, or?
I started with piano.
Okay.
My grandmother was a professional piano teacher.
Wow.
And so she taught me scales and basic chords and some reading as well. And I kind of pushed against it because I thought drums were cooler. And I regret that now. I wish I had stuck with it because I write well enough. I play well enough to write songs.
Okay.
But I don't play piano live. But my mom was quick to kind of realize, he likes drums. And so she started me in drum lessons in like 3rd grade.
Wow.
So I did go through the whole private lessons, then play in school orchestra and band and jazz ensemble and marching band. My high school had a gospel choir, musical theater program where you could be in the pit. So
right.
I was fortunate to come up in a school district right outside
Nice.
of Cleveland in Shaker Heights, Ohio, that had their public schools had a massive music program.
So
Still
important.
have a massive music
so
program.
important.
Yeah.
I like to hear that. Good,
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I would not be who I am if it was not for that opportunity of having the arts just consuming the entire school, because they made everybody, even the football players, had to do something artistic. So we had guys who were on the football team who were running from the line to come into the marching band, play the halftime show, then go right
Are you
back.
serious?
Oh yeah. And
Love it.
it was great. No, the school district, they had like 4 concert bands and 3 jazz ensembles, a full orchestra, multiple choirs. The marching band was too big to compete. We were like 300 people strong. So we never did any of the marching competitions because our band director, I don't think he wanted to pick and choose the best people to go. So the arts were huge.
Nice. I love hearing that. So kudos to your school in Shaker.
Yes.
What, Shaker
Heights?
Yeah. Very cool. So, all right, why don't we hear something?
Cool.
Cool, he says.
So I'm going to try something different.
Okay.
I don't normally sing. I play just enough, like I said, to write a tune.
Okay.
So what I like to do is actually use this software to create whatever it may be.
Okay.
The drum part or the bass part. And then, allow myself to write using that software. And then I'll give it to people who really sing. And so, how about this? I'll do a quick kind of layering demonstration.
Okay.
And by quick, this will take me a couple minutes. And
No
then
problem.
I'll sing on top of it. And then I'll show you what it turned into.
Okay.
I'll show you the
Oh,
final
this is cool.
version. Yeah.
Okay, so this will be a first, which is really cool that, we're kind of getting a lesson here. No, I love it. But because, a lot of times for musicians, especially up and coming, it's to see how somebody creates something is always a nice thing to see. And of course, the education, as you already mentioned, your education and, your family, putting, teaching you and everything. So it kind of goes hand in hand here.
So I'll start. This is just going to be, so you're hearing the metronome right now in this system. And I'll come up with the drum beat first. So 1, 2, 3. Or whatever it might be. Cool. Let me make sure I get that first note in there. 3 and cool. All right, so that's our drum groove. I will start with just the basic chords. So 1, 2. So this is just basic piano. 2. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. So that's our kind of piano part,
Okay.
And this will be for the verse and the chorus. It's a nice simple tune. 2 chords for all of that good stuff.
You only need 3 chords to write a song.
I know,
so.
right? I'll add our bass part. So 1, 2, 3. Now let me do that again. Sorry, I'm not a bass player either. I'll add a little guitar part. 2, 3. simple organ part on top of that. To just like a. So when I write a tune, that's kind of the basic what I'll do to kick things off.
Okay.
And I'll add one more piece to this puzzle, so we have a bridge. But just for time's sake, I'm going to use the same exact drum beat. So different chords here.
Okay.
And this bridge is 8 bars instead of 4. So a measure is one cycle of that 4 count, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you hear me say 8 bars or 8 measures, it means the same thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my... Cool. So... So that'll be our bridge. I'll do the same thing. I'll add a bass part to it. Let me do it one more time. See? You're getting a real taste of it. So... it's all right. I'm going to live with that. There we go. That's good enough. And then same thing, I'll add some nicer... Cool. We got a decent bridge part there. And then our guitar part, so a motif. Right, kind of coming from the other part. Cool. All right, so we have our tune.
Okay, we do. Okay.
We do. We got our tune.
We have a tune.
We've got the beginnings of it. So let
Interesting.
me set this all up. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
Did you think about this beforehand, or did you just do that?
Oh, this is a song that
Okay.
I could play in my sleep. So,
Okay.
And I'll play the final version as it eventually turned into what it did.
Okay.
So this is a song that I wrote probably in 2010, and in 2012 it was on the first full album that I ever put out.
Okay.
But I have to think about my own section lengths. Okay, cool. So verse, chorus. Sorry. So what I'm thinking about here is making sure that my actual section lengths are the right timing. Otherwise, I run the risk of having this program play the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Okay.
Nobody wants that.
No. Whatever that means.
Because remember how I was talking about measures there?
Yes.
If I set the verse to be 7 bars and it should be 8,
Oh, I got
I'm
you.
setting myself up for some real issues.
A dead
further
stop.
on down
Yeah.
the line.
Okay.
Exactly. So,
And this is how you normally write your songs, just
Yeah.
pretty much just piece by piece, and then.
and I'll put together, like, this sounds like Super Nintendo music because it's all electronic.
Uh-huh.
But what I'll do is I'll piece together the basics of it. So
Okay.
the chords, the melody, just the basic structure. And some parts, like that little guitar part where you got...
Yeah.
Like, I would get a guitar player to come in and actually play that.
Right.
He probably knocked it down. It's a little bit high. But, yeah, and that way it gives the people who can really do it, the singers, the musicians, the basic structure of understanding what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the worst thing is to come into the studio and have somebody say, okay, yeah, give me a drum beat. And you're like, okay, what do you want? And they're like, I don't know. You know? And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's super frustrating.
So that's as when you're a session musician, and is that what you mean
Mm-hmm.
talking about? So shouldn't they know what they want?
I mean, some do and some don't, and sometimes it also comes into, like, the ownership of a song is the chords, the melody, and the lyrics. And so if they're coming up with some iconic melody like a, then who owns that? Did he come up with a part of the song that's so iconic they should get songwriting credit on it?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
so when you are not able to ask for what you want, other people can end up writing your tune. You know, same thing with chord progressions and like the iconic vocal melody kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as someone who's not normally a singer, it gets tough. So I'm going to ask Ryan. Ryan, can you throw some reverb on this mic so I can mask the fact that I'm not a good singer? Check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I don't want. So Facebook Live, come back in like 4 minutes if you don't want to hear me try and sing.
It'll be fine, Drew. It'll be fine.
So.
Thanks to Ryan, our engineer back there.
Yeah, Ryan's killing it today. So yeah, I just pieced that together. So I'm going to give myself 4 bars, and I'm going to hope that I'm correct about my section length.
Okay.
It's all 8 bars. Okay, here we go. So this tune is called Crying in a Whisper. All right. Get my first note. So the verse. I don't understand, you know, but I've tried since day number 1. It's like playing an endless game of catch-up on the courses that we've run. And I've had this hope for so long now, since I held you in my arms that day. But each step closer that I take to you seems a little closer to harm's way. And the hook, you got me crying in a whisper, yelling out loud, talking to myself in the middle of a crowd, running around in circles, 'cause I don't know where we stand. I'm pacing like a little boy who wants to be a man. Seems like everybody wants you, yeah. Second verse, you know. You're easy to fall for so fast. Makes me worry that first night might also be our last. I'm gonna try this here. It stings every time I see you, girl. When you meet another guy's eye, it's all we built this love upon. Nothing but smoke, mirrors and lies. Then hook again. You got me crying in a whisper, yelling out loud, talking to myself in the middle of a crowd. I'm running round in circles, 'cause I don't know where we stand. I'm pacing like a little boy who wants to be your man. And the bridge is different, so 'cause you're an easy girl to fall for so fast. And I keep hoping that first night won't be our last. I see you lead a lot, but I could be that flock of one. But you're messing up, that's it, I'm done. Crying in a whisper, yelling out loud, talking to myself. So you get the hook again, right? And then I like to write outro lyrics. So the outro lyrics kind of put a button on the whole story.
Okay.
So it sounds like the singer's making them up. But at the outro, the singer would say, see, I don't want to just walk away now, but it hurts seeing you with another guy every single day. I gotta stop playing all those silly little games, 'cause every time I see you, I'm just driving myself insane. Crying in a whisper. Going right back to it, right?
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not a singer. I'm not a great piano player.
You're not that terrible of a singer, Drew. Come on.
Oh, well, thank you. But let me just to give you a sense of where that ends up. So clearly the song is there, the structure is there, the lyrics are there, the chords are there. Here's what that song turned into.
Okay.
I don't understand you, though I've tried since day 1. It's like playing an
So you've got
game of catch
live
up.
band, horns, background vocals, but you can still hear that guitar part in there, that little,
And I had this hope
you know.
for so long now, since I held you in my arms that day. But each step closer that I take to you seems a little closer to harm's way. You got me yelling out loud, talking to
And you can hear that chorus became like a call and response. Background vocals, lead vocalist.
'cause I don't know where we stand.
Background vocals, lead.
Wants to be your man. Seems like everybody wants you.
And then I'll skip to the end so you can hear those outro lyrics.
Okay.
I see you
Yeah, here we go. Here we go.
Want to be your man. I don't want to just walk away. Talking to myself. But it hurts seeing you with another guy. Hey. I've got to stop playing your silly little games. 'Cause every time I see you, I'm driving myself insane. Talking to myself. Yeah.
Cool. So that song was like the lead single off of an album I did in 2012.
Was that your debut Back to Class?
That was Back to Class. Yeah.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
song was sung by the Four Tops. And it was James Jamerson Jr. on bass,
Awesome.
whose dad played almost
Oh,
every Motown
yeah.
hit you can
Oh,
think of
yeah.
on bass. And he himself was a phenomenal bass player.
You can definitely hear the Motown, the influence there for sure. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Obviously with the, all those singers in the Four Tops there, but it was like, wow, that was, I just right off the bat, I didn't realize it when you were putting it together, but when you hear the
Right.
final, it's like, oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing as a songwriter and as a producer, it is recognizing just because I'm not the Four Tops as a vocalist doesn't mean that I can't write a song that they can knock out of the ballpark
right.
and bring to life. And so it's been an interesting challenge as an artist because I'm not the traditional stand in front of the microphone and deliver on stage and blow everybody's mind. Like, I don't think I'll ever be that. But I love writing. Like, I
Yeah.
just love writing a song. And yeah, like the musicians themselves, like I said, you can hear that the song is there as
Yeah.
an idea. But let me just play you the end real quick of this. This is from the album version. The
Okay.
single version was cut short. But at the very end of this, you get to hear Jamerson Jr. really.
Hey, James. Pluck it, baby.
That's Duke Fakir, who's the remaining original member. But you can hear how good of a bass player he is.
Yeah.
Lay it down. Lay it down.
Sorry, I've heard this so many times. He is so awesome. I like this right here. And this one right here. I mean, it's like that bass makes it sound like Motown because
Yeah.
he's playing
Oh.
the kind of stuff his father would have played on Bernadette or,
Yeah.
any of those Motown bass parts that were just like ground shaking. And you take those two chords, and when you have those fireworks on it, you don't realize, oh, that's just two chords,
No, yeah.
Yeah. And so as a producer, it's fun because there are certain parts where I'm like, I need to hear that. I need to hear that little plucky on guitar.
Yeah.
But as far as the bass, I got James Jamerson Jr. on here. You do your thing,
Yeah.
and it's what's so fun about it. So that's kind of my process is writing, to trying to tailor a song for an artist that I love and trying to write something that would sound like something that they themselves would have written or that they themselves would have sung back in the 60s.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's what I really go for. Yeah.
Have you ever written something for someone specifically in mind and then approach them like you do? I have no reservations about it. Meeting these people, and present them with a song. Have you done that?
Oh, yeah. What I'll do a lot of times is put together an actual video that looks like a karaoke video. So it's like the lyrics popping up on screen as I sing my own demo. And so that way you're waiting to see what the next lyric is going to be. It's not like just looking at it all in one sheet where you can see the whole thing in advance. It's almost like you're sitting on the seat of your pants waiting to see what the next line is going to be. And it also distracts them from the fact that I'm not a great singer.
You keep mentioning that, but
well, and I had one of the best compliments as a writer. I pitched a song to Reginald Torian, who was the lead singer of The Impressions. He stepped into Curtis Mayfield's shoes after Leroy Hudson in the 70s and then sang with them all the way up until, like, essentially when he passed away. He was still with them in 2013 or 14. And I had sang the demo myself, and he had told me that sometimes people approach him with songs, and the demo vocal is so good and so professional that he immediately starts comparing himself as a singer to that.
Oh.
Where when it's just the bare bones, here's the lyrics and here's the melody, and no frills and fireworks, the singer is able to imagine what they would do with it a little bit
Oh.
easier, because it's like a blank canvas
Yeah.
as opposed to seeing something that's already completely filled out
Yeah.
and now replicate that, or they're not
Interesting.
sure how specifically they should try and replicate it.
Interesting.
So in some ways, the bare bones singing has really helped as a songwriter in
Yeah.
pitching. Yeah.
Never thought of it that way, but they want to hear it how they would do it, probably.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I just had a session yesterday with a gentleman named Antoine Stanley, who sings a lot with the group Wolfpack,
Okay.
and he is probably as close to a virtuoso vocalist that as I will ever get to work with. The guy can just sing anything. And he came in, and same thing. He was like, "How closely do you want me to play it to your demo?" And I was like, there were certain moments where I said the melody has to hit these certain parts, or there was a lyric that had to be heard where if the line is too melismatic and too riff and runny, you lose what the word itself is.
Okay.
But for the most part, I was just like, you do Antoine Stanley because you're Antoine Stanley. I just wrote the song hearing his voice on it,
Go
So,
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's fun.
Interesting. Is there anybody that you haven't written for that you would love to?
Oh, so many.
Oh, so many.
So many. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but yeah, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure, knowing what I know of you so far, that might not be a problem. The way you.
I don't know. So the Back to Class series it's kind of like the Quincy Jones thing. Quincy in the early 2000s put out a bunch of albums under his own name, but he had people like Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles singing songs. Some of them were songs that he composed. Some of them were his arrangements of other songs, but it was his name on the album. And that was the first time where I saw someone's name up front, where I was like, oh, this person's not the person singing the lead vocal.
Yeah.
But there's still the common thread through this entire album. A similar album was the Mark Ronson one with Uptown Funk on it.
Okay.
Everyone thinks that's a Bruno Mars song because he sang it.
Right.
That's a Mark Ronson song. He's the one whose name is up front.
Okay. Okay.
And so I was like, I want to try and do that. And I can't sing. So I'm going to call my friends who I'd been working with. At the time I was going back to finish college, I had taken time off to tour with the Four Tops. So I was literally going back to class. And then 50% of the profits benefit Detroit Public Schools music programs because I was a public school music kid.
Love that.
And so it's hopefully, ideally, the project is fun for everybody. You know, I don't know. It's been like, it's interesting because it's a total passion project. I wish I could say that it's sold so much money that I'm paying my bills on it and everybody's getting paid and we're raising a ton of money for the schools. And so while it's a huge focus of my own personal endeavors, it's been a launching pad for so much professional stuff.
Yeah.
Since then.
Like more working with more artists, or what kind of?
All across the board, artists, teaching, producing. You know, I got to do, just recently, there's a festival called Detroit A-Go-Go coming up in October, where hundreds of British soul fans rent out the whole St. Regis Hotel.
Oh.
They fly over from the UK and see all of their favorite, like, Northern Soul, Detroit, Motown kind of underdog artists who
really?
should be superstars,
Yeah.
but didn't necessarily get the break or get the promotion or get the right song at the right time on the right, hit the right crowd.
Yeah.
But are still amazing. And so as a part of this, there's a group called the Fantastic Four, which Ralph Pruitt, one of the original members, selected some guys to keep that group going.
Okay.
And so I got to work on some Fantastic Four recordings that are going to be put out on vinyl during this festival. And it's like the average person might not know the name Fantastic Four. They might think about the comic book characters.
Right.
But the group was around in the 60s and some of my favorite music. And so it's still just like allows me to really embrace the stuff that I love while paying the bills with stuff that I also love. But if I was just to go out there in the world and say I'm only going to make soul music reminiscent of the 60s,
Might be tough.
it might be tough. To be that specific.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, if I'm doing a 30-second jingle about a Subway turkey sandwich, if it lets me go back and make 60s soul music, I'm cool with that. So the professional realities are still there.
Oh, of course, as are for most musicians.
Yes.
Yes. So this festival, what are you doing? Producing or what?
So for the
Music
festival, no, the musical director is a drummer named Ronnie Nelson, who's toured with Dennis Edwards' Temptations Review. He's toured with the Vandellas. He's toured with so many artists. He was a member of the Floaters Orchestra back in the 70s, TFO, and still leads that group. So Ronnie's the musical director. I just get to play hand percussion for it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm so thankful that Ronnie lets me hang out, because this year it's a couple of the former members of the Supremes and Mark Scott from the Miracles and G.C. Cameron, who was a part of the Spinners and the Temptations. It's J.J. Barnes, Spider Turner, Carolyn Crawford, Pat Lewis, Kim Weston, I
Jeez, all
think
these
the
names.
Velvelettes, the original Vandellas.
Wow.
I think I need to look at the poster. I should be able to know this right off the top of my head. But Willie
That's
Kendrick.
a lot of people.
It's huge. It's like a 4-day festival
Okay,
of soul
okay.
music, and it's one of those things where these artists are huge over in the UK.
Yeah.
So normally they would fly maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them out each year to tour.
Okay.
And the guys who put the festival together, Phil Dick and Neil Rushton, I believe, were just like, instead of flying a couple people over, let's fly everybody over to Detroit where they can see all these artists all at one time.
I was going to say, well, how do you get enough people from the UK to fly over here for a festival? That in itself seems big.
Yeah, it's interesting because I obviously wasn't around to experience it, but Northern Soul in England seems to have been just as much about a way of life and a social circle and a scene as it was about the music. And so it's dance music. A lot of it has that that real driving kind of Motown beat, and so it was a dance scene in England, but also spawned a record collecting scene where it was like, the more obscure the record, the rarer it was, but still fill the dance floor. And so people are all dancing, but they're like, I don't know what song this is.
But it's got a good
it
groove.
fosters this love for the artist. And so a lot of these fans love the artists and the music that they made, even though it didn't necessarily hit the top of the charts, was like a piece of their lives soundtrack.
Interesting.
And a lot of these artists are still here in Detroit, still writing, performing, recording, gigging, touring, kicking butt. And I'm like, I want to be like them when I grow up.
Listen to it when I grow up. Oh my gosh, Drew, and when you say that, I just like, seriously. I mean, you have done so much already. I really don't know how old you are, but you're not that old.
31.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, okay.
Yeah.
It's like you have done a ton. I mean, just musically already in your 31 years. It's just, like I said, when you looking at all the people you've worked with, and and you've got mentored by, and right now you're the drummer for the Four Tops tour was okay.
Yeah. I'm
But still was.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, when you can say that you've done all these things and you've worked with all these people.
It's been wonderful. It's been about 12 years of my life just being super consumed with wanting to work with my heroes because they're my heroes and because they're still with us and have you ever heard the phrase, give the flowers while they're here, and these artists deserve all the accolades, all the attention that they can get because they are still doing it doing it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a gentleman named Melvin Davis who I believe is 76, and he's in Detroit. He's one of my best friends. We talk almost every day, and we write together and produce together and perform together. And when I first met him, it was just like I loved the music that he made.
Yeah.
But to be able to be a part of it, because they're all people too. You know what I mean? And just I don't know. I'm rambling, but Detroit initially Detroit became like a mecca for me musically, and slowly, truly has become home.
Love it.
Yeah.
Great stuff. I love the fact when like a 76-year-old is helping a 31-year-old, because you've got to be able to share and mentor kids and people, and and I love when they do that. That's really cool.
And vice versa. Whenever I perform live with the band I lead called the Broken Habits, our show is half original songs that I've written and half covers.
Oh, okay.
So we'll do one of the Back to Class songs that I wrote that featured Melvin on the album, and then we'll cover a Melvin Davis song. And so the show is blocked out almost like a storyline. And
Nice.
so between songs, it's teaching people about this vast history that is all still here in Detroit. Like you said, the talent never left.
Right.
And And a lot of these artists are still out there. And so we'll play a Spider Turner tune, we'll play a Pat Lewis tune, and talk about these artists to a crowd that should know who these people are. And I don't know, like to be able to kind of create that cycle of creating the scene here again,
And
hopefully.
I think because of your upbringing, you learned about these things, and then you were part of it. It's almost ingrained in you that I need to keep this going, keep paying forward type of thing, and sharing what everyone has to offer. So,
Well, I wouldn't have a career without all these artists,
Oh, yeah.
So,
all right. Do we have something else you want to play, or I don't know.
sure, yeah,
You gave us the song writing lesson. That was kind of cool.
yeah.
But I don't know if you.
Yeah,
another one
so I'll tell you what, I can talk a little bit about kind of some of the Motown stuff.
Okay.
So let me wipe this.
Bring it, which makes, I wanted to mention, I love the fact you were part of course, Barry Gordy.
I mean, not
You met
personally.
him.
Yeah.
You met him. Okay. All right.
We don't hang out.
But, yeah.
But
No, but I love the fact that you were part of that whole thing when the Motown piano was a mess, and Paul McCartney basically funded to get this thing fixed and tuned and everything, and
Yeah.
you were involved with that.
I was fortunate enough, the Motown Museum's, I hope I'm saying the position right, their fund development manager is a gentleman named Paul Barker. And he worked with the museum when it first started, when Barry's sister, Esther Gordy Edwards, realized, like, we have this historical, groundbreaking thing that happened. This needs to be preserved and presented, and this legacy needs to be protected and delivered.
Yeah.
So she created the museum, and Paul was there with her at the beginning of it, and has kind of worked with the museum on and off throughout the years. Now he's back with them. But Paul really helped put that event together. And I had known Paul through a gentleman named Harry Weinger, who's the VP of A&R for Classic Motown, doing all the re-releases. I was working as an engineer for him.
Okay.
And when I moved to Detroit, Harry was like, you need to call Paul Barker. And so then I went back to New York for school, and Paul called me and said, I'm doing this event in New York where Paul McCartney's refurbishing this piano. Will you help work the event? And I was just like,
Heck yeah.
yes. And so I dropped everything, canceled all my rehearsals, canceled all my private lessons, and I was like, I'm going to go and do this thing. And so I was just doing logistics. I was like checking people in and making sure that they got their name badge, keeping track of who was there and who hadn't shown up yet. That just I was working the door, essentially.
Hey, you were in the door.
I was
so
in the room,
that's
yeah.
it.
And I'm so thankful that Paul called me for that. And one of my then coworkers, Andy Scurro, who's the vault manager for Motown, also worked it with me, and it was just a ton of fun, and it was such a crazy experience because the love for R&B and soul and Motown coming from the UK is no better represented than someone like Paul McCartney,
yeah.
Hello. Saying this is something
Sir
that needs
Paul.
to be preserved. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And in some ways in the UK, Motown's even bigger there than it is here.
Really?
Oh yeah. With the Tops and Temptations, when we were on the road in the States, we will play state theaters. We'll play places like Pine Knob. We would play, Motor City Casino, beautiful venues. But when we would go overseas to the UK, we were playing like the Manchester Arena and the O2 in London, which is where Michael Jackson was going to do that whole run of shows before he passed, and where Prince did like his residency. And it's crazy. Yeah, they are arena level acts over in the UK.
Interesting.
And that love is still real strong over there.
Love to hear that. Yeah. Well, come on, Motown. Come on.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't realize, we're in Detroit. This Motown was here. This is where it all began. And sometimes I don't think people, if you're into music and all that, for sure, but it's like the younger generation, sometimes I wonder, it's like, do you realize what we have here? And it's like,
And I think that a lot of times people do because they teach it in schools. But one of the things I love about the Motown Museum is that they focus just as much on the music as they do on the entrepreneurship aspect of it. So their thing is, here's a young man from Detroit who borrowed $800 from his family to start this massive culture-changing empire.
Yeah.
And he was a younger guy, and that all the talent was younger. I think the Supremes were straight out of high school. Obviously, Stevie was a kid. And so it was this collection of young talent that worked to build this whole thing. And I mean, difficult business decisions obviously happen, and not everyone came out of it a household name. But it all was just done here. And so for the museum to say this is something that some young man from Detroit did, and you can do it too. That's what I love about the museum's aspect of it, is keeping that entrepreneurial spirit alive and saying, taking charge of your own skill set and creativity and building a brand and really using yourself as the business is something that's really powerful.
And you currently work at the museum?
I do. I'm their educational program manager.
Love it.
And so actually a week from today, we are starting our second summer camp of the year, which is Motown Museum Spark. It is full, sadly, but they do it every year.
Okay.
So anybody who's listening in, if you have someone in grades 6, 7, and 8, they could do the Spark Summer Camp. Grades 9 through 12, high schoolers get to do the Ignite Summer Camp. And each year, it's basic lessons in singing, songwriting, dancing, beat making, and production. Some instrumental performance as well.
Okay.
They both end with a showcase where campers get to perform for friends and family, but there are a lot of business lessons in there as well.
Nice. I like that. Carry on, the educational part of it, and
No, it's fun.
for the next generation.
And for Ignite, this year alone, we had Allie Willis come in, who wrote September, and Boogie Wonderland with Earth, Wind, and Fire. We had Dennis Coffey, a Funk Brothers guitar player. We had Joe Pep Harris and Brenda Joyce Evans, 2 original members of Undisputed Truth, came in and talked to the campers. We had Jonathan Azu, who's a music management manager working with Corey Henry and Anita Baker. He Skyped in to talk about management with the kids. We had Booster Mawston, who's a studio owner, come in. We had...
Wow, big names.
I'm trying my best to remember everyone. It was many people. Yeah. Our keynote speaker was Beth Griffith Manley, who was on The Voice.
Yes.
But she's also the daughter of Johnny Griffith from the Funk Brothers.
Yep.
And so she has that Motown connection. She's still touring with Kem, who's currently signed to Motown.
It's all intertwined,
It really is. It really is.
Amazing.
No, and it's fun. And in Detroit, this such a huge music city. One of the judges for our showcase was a gentleman named Alex Handy, who owned a club called the Viper Room, where Eminem got his start as Slim Shady, did his first couple performances. And, Alex was super enthusiastic about being a part of this Motown camp. And sometimes you wouldn't necessarily connect those two worlds when you think about things, but it really is. It's the same 12 notes. It's the same. You're writing a song, whatever genre it has, it's going to be using these 12 notes. It's going to be using some combination of the same rhythms, the same chords. A lot of times it's even the same lyrical ideas. How many songs have we heard about heartache and pain because my baby left me, or whatever? Whatever the genre is, you know?
Yes.
So,
especially country.
I mean, country, funk, R&B, rock, hip hop, so much of it, it really does come to the same place.
And the key is to mix those up enough that you've got a hit from that. If you got the basics down.
I don't know what the key is. If I knew what the key was, I would have a hit.
But you have this. So you had this debut CD. And it's benefiting the Detroit Public Schools. Kudos to you. And so we need to sell more of those to help out keep the music program going around here.
I mean, it's been fun. I've gotten to do some work with DSA, the Detroit School of the Arts, right up on Woodward. Their programs are wonderful. There still are schools that have awesome things happening. Cass Tech has Ralph Armstrong, bass player. He comes in and work with the kids.
Nice.
I know that Big Sean opened up a studio in DPS, and there is stuff there, and it's just like not everybody has access to it, and I don't know. It's such a bigger issue. Money alone won't solve it anyways. It's such a huge issue. But
I love the fact that those big names are, pitching in and helping it. Because that gives it a little more leverage and
One of my favorite quotes I've ever heard was from Bill Withers. He did a speech at a scholarship foundation award ceremony I was at a couple years ago, and he was talking about music education and education in general. And he said that education is pretty much always there for those who want it. If you seek it out, you can find it. He said it's not necessarily always there for those who need it. And so his line was, it is our responsibility to make sure those who need it also want it.
Ah.
And so making sure that education is something that kids want and understand the value of is also a huge part of it.
Right.
And that's why it's so much fun to be able to teach through the lens of Motown, which is still connected to all of these huge artists today.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Beyonce paying tribute to Motown. You've got John Legend paying tribute to Motown, doing a whole Marvin Gaye show at the Kennedy Center. Like all these contemporary artists love Motown. So that connection is there, and it's a great way to allow music education to be exciting for students.
I remember, and I apologize, I cannot remember the artist's name, but it was a major national artist in a rock band, I believe it was, and he taught. I think he still teaches, I'm not sure, but he said in an interview he was telling me, he says, I would rather teach a kid who really is not good on an instrument but has the passion than a kid that's really good on an instrument and was like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
He says, I'd rather teach the passionate kid because it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know, he says, I'll take that over the other side.
And I agree with that, but even if it's not music, even if it's science, math, English, technology, just having teachers and curriculum that makes the kids passionate about it is also a challenge. As a teacher, like that's the goal is, you know, I've learned so much about music that I never thought I would learn because I wanted to be able to go to a student and say, oh, you want to learn this drum pattern? I had a student who was obsessed with a video game called Five Nights at Freddy's. So we would do all these drum exercises to the soundtrack from that. Instead of a metronome doing the click, we would just use his favorite songs. And I would try and dig these kernels of information out about music theory from the songs that he already loved. And as a teacher, I've learned so much about music because I've had to go and try and bring it in a way that excites the student. And I love that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You can tell. I mean, you still have that passion. I mean, just I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to play or could play for us, but that's up to you. I mean, you gave us our lesson already for the day.
No, I can give you something. So I'm working on a second volume of the Back to Class project, and the guest list is already amazing. I'm working on some more tunes, but so far the tops are on it. Antoine Stanley and Jack Stratton from Wolfpack are on it. Melvin Davis, Spider Turner, Carolyn Crawford, Joe Pep Harris with his current group of the Fabulous Peps, Willie Jones from the Royal Jokers, Harrison Kennedy from Chairman of the Board, Tommy Good from Motown days, who's a killer jazz singer, Joe Messina from the Funk Brothers, Eddie Willis from the Funk Brothers. All these people are on it. But some younger talent as well. Thornetta Davis is on it. Booster Mawson is on it. Caleb Gutierrez from the Infatuations is on it. Emily Rose and Anthony Retka from the singer-songwriter scene are on it. So I'll do a song from there. But because the song is not yet released, you'll have to keep an eye out for the album to hear the real version.
Okay, all right.
But this tune is called Too Quick Caller. So, yeah, this is another original.
You were well connected with all those people. Holy moly.
I'm just a fan. I'm just a music fan. So, I'll try this again. Ryan, can I get that reverb again? Check. There we go. Facebook, you can log off now if you want to understand. All right, so this one says, my friends all laugh right in my face when I tell them about the girl who I met the other day now. They say they've heard it all before, and I guess they're gonna have to hear it all once more. My friends, they say they're not surprised to see the look that's in my eyes now, to see I've fallen once again. They ask me if it ever ends. Now that cycle seems to stay the same. That's why they know me by this name. I'm the too quick caller.
You got to slow down.
I'm the too fast father, y'all.
So you roll down.
I'm the too quick caller.
You got to slow down.
I'm the too fast father.
So you roll down.
My friends, they joke behind my back. They always have some new wisecrack now. I fall so fast, they say there's no dispute. They say I better get myself a parachute. Because the slightest push from standing still will start me rolling down that hill now. And once I fall and start to drop, it's just so hard to make me stop. This cycle seems to stay the same. That's why they know me by those names. I'll meet a girl, miss a girl, before I'm ever with that girl. I want what she's got before I know what she has. That's why they know me as too quick caller.
Got to slow down, slow down.
I'm the too fast faller, y'all.
Slow your roll down, roll down.
I'm the too quick caller.
Got to slow down, slow down.
I'm the too fast faller now.
Slow your roll down, roll down. Slow your roll down, roll down. Slow your roll down, roll down.
The cycle seems to stay the same. That's why they know me by those names. I'll meet a girl, miss a girl, before I'm ever with that girl. I want what she's got before I know what she has. That's why they know me as too quick caller.
You got to slow down, slow down.
I'm a too fast faller, y'all.
Slow your roll down, roll down.
I'm a too quick caller.
You got to slow down, slow down.
I'm a too fast faller. Now here's those outro lyrics again. Before the clock has made its turn, my fire lights and starts to burn. Before you count from 1 to 10, I've gone and fallen once again. I'm a too quick caller, y'all. I got to slow my roll down. I'm a too quick caller. Or something like that. So you'll have to wait and hear how that sounds
We
with
will
the
wait,
real
yeah.
singers singing it. But Joe Pep Harris and the Fabulous Peps are singing that one on the next record, and they are awesome.
I love it. I love it. So when's this new album coming out?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
All
still
right.
working on it. Still writing songs, pitching them. So
Okay.
I'm doing as many as I can.
Well, I'm going to. We're running out of time, but I've got to get a couple questions in for the PAM exam. So we're just going to like
I got you.
quick fire. What is your guilty pleasure?
Ooh, vinyl records and CDs.
What puts you in your happy place?
Vinyl records and CDs. And my fiance, who I love dearly.
Aw, well, thanks for getting that in there. Your most memorable music moment, and this is going to be tough with what you've done so far. You can
all
turn the
of it.
reverb off.
All of it. I don't know. That's a hard one. Hanging out with Bill Withers was one of the big ones.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Awesome. Favorite non-music pastime?
Ooh, building model kits, playing video games, and walking our dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Would you like to write music for a video game? Would that be cool? Have you
Oh, I would
done
do that in a nanosecond.
Yeah,
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 that would
yeah.
be so much fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see you trying to do that one. Okay, you'll get in somehow, knowing you. If you had to share a 15-minute taxi ride with someone, who would that be? They could be dead or alive at this point.
Oof. Picking one person is so hard.
I would imagine.
I don't know. That's such a hard one. There are so many people. I can't get a quick one for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man. I can't even think
Okay.
about it. Yeah.
All right, fill in the blank. I wish I could.
Sing better.
You're not that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was expecting like, oh my God, I can't take my headphones off. No, that wasn't bad.
I'm working on it, taking some vocal lessons.
Oh, there you go. Good for you. You know, you
trying.
see something you want to get, work on or whatever, and you're the go-getter type, so I can see that happening. All right. Is there a quote you live by your life by or think of often?
Not a quote, but the big philosophy is, don't cheat yourself out of what you love, and keep tabs on when you're doing it for love and when you're doing it to pay the bills. Both are fine, but yeah,
Distinguish the two.
yeah, especially
Interesting.
when they're both coming from the same skill set. It could be
Yeah.
could be a challenge.
All right. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a spice, what would you be?
Oh, I don't cook with spice. I'm a plain, boring vanilla.
Well, that, all right,
That's
vanilla.
a spice. Yeah.
I guess if vanilla bean could be.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! All right, the time just flew by. I mean, you've got some great stories
Oh,
and
thanks
just
for
the
having me.
things you know are involved in. And thanks for the songwriting lesson. That was
Hey,
awesome.
It was fun.
That was really cool.
Sorry we didn't get more into the lyric stuff, but we only got an hour. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, no, absolutely. So, real quick, make sure people know how to reach you if they have
Yes.
questions or want to,
Yep.
anything. that you're involved in.
www.dsdrums.com. That's my initials, Drew Schultz, dsdrums.com. But I've also got Facebook and Instagram. I'm not as active on Twitter as I should be. I know I should be. But Facebook is easy,
Yeah.
and dsdrums.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Cool, yeah.
awesome. It's been a real treat, Drew.
Thank you for having me.
It's been
Yeah.
fun, yeah. So
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, all the reverbery. And thanks to all of you out there for watching. We do appreciate that. And we'll do it again next week. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Pam Rossi. Have a great week.